close your eyes for a moment and let the mind's theater draw its curtain. Imagine a world shaped not only by hands and tools, but by images unspooled in the silent projection room behind your forehead. Imagine standing on the edge of a great sea, history itself rolling in ceaseless waves before you, and noticing that every ripple, every crash and spray was first conjured within the minds of men and women daring to see what was not yet real. In the ancient hush of dawn, Marcus Aurelius, emperor and philosopher, would sit in the dim lamplight. His empire was immense, unruly, weighed down by the expectations of millions. But before the world would awaken to test his resolve, he would picture himself tested, mocked, betrayed, battered by fate. He rehearsed not just outcomes, but the very contours of his soul weathering the oncoming storm. The impediment to action advances action, he wrote. What stands in the way becomes the way. With every act of imagination, he became stronger, steadier, the architecture of his mind building a citadel more real than marble. We think sometimes that visualization is fantasy, daydreaming, the fool's idle escape. But listen closely. Every arrow that flew true, every bridge that spanned a chasm, every verse that comforted a lonely heart, these began as visions. The great library of Alexandria arose because men dared to envision a sanctuary for all knowledge, even as ignorance rioted in the streets. Lao Tzu, sitting by the quiet river, pondered the formless origins of creation and saw in his mind how water wore down stone. He who conquers others is strong. He who conquers himself is mighty. Self-conquest too begins in the unseen, the inner rehearsal. What if you, sitting here, scrolling or listening in the dim-lit hours, have within you the same seed, a capacity to conjure a life of intention, to see it so clearly with the mind's eye that reality, one slow inch at a time, can be made to yield. The journey, if you dare let it be so, is not simply about setting goals or creating vision boards. It is about returning day after day to that private cinema where you see not only triumph but trial, not only applause but silent struggle, where you become the architect, the sculptor, the sovereign of your experience. Great thinkers understood this. Benjamin Franklin, as a young, impoverished apprentice in a grimy print shop, would imagine himself a man of learning, seated in luminous halls, arguing philosophy with the greatest minds in the colonies. Each evening, he reviewed in his journal the day's conduct, not with self-contempt, but with the gentle eyes of a craftsman assessing a work in progress. He saw not what was, but what could be. Over years, what could be became what was. But let us not confuse fantasy with visualization. Fantasy is untethered, a vapor, unanchored to effort or discipline. Visualization is rehearsal. Picture a violinist before a grand performance, eyes closed, bow hovering above the strings. She is not lost in a cloud. She is feeling the movements, in her nerve endings, tasting the air of the hall, presenting herself so fully in the imagined scenario that the body and soul begin to blur the line between what is rehearsed and what is real. This is the power the Stoics recognized. Take your time, counseled Epictetus. Deliberate, imagine, prepare. The mind, trained to anticipate adversity, meets it with composure. The mind, trained to see itself victorious, conquers fear. Epictetus, once a slave with nothing, his own but his thoughts, taught students to pre-play moments of challenge. What if your friend insults you? What if fortune abandons you? See it now, he would say. Picture your response. Build the muscles in silence that you will need in the storm. But history does not belong only to emperors and philosophers. Consider a young athlete battered by the weight of expectation, a million eyes waiting to name him a legend or a disappointment. Before dawn, he sits on the cool stadium bench, long before the applause, and he visualizes the race, every stride, every gasp for air, the roar of the crowd, the pull in his legs, the agony and the elation. When the moment comes, he runs a race he has already run 1,000 times in the haunted corridors of his mind. And when gold is draped about his neck, the victory is not new. It is almost ordinary. Visualization is not superstition. It is blueprint. It is preemptive action. What the mind rehearses, the body learns. What the heart dares to imagine, the spirit pursues in waking life. And yet, we must ask ourselves, what precisely are we rehearsing? For the mind is a mirror that reflects all images, not only the luminous, but the dark. Nietzsche, wandering the cold streets of Sils Maria, warned of this. Be careful when you cast out your demons that you do not throw away the best of yourself. Picture only defeat, and every nerve in your body will learn to expect the sting of failure. Dwell on envy, and you will find yourself cramped and bitter, living out someone else's story while your own withers in the shade. Visualization is a tool, yes, a sword or a plow, depending on how you wield it. The unexamined vision shapes us just as surely as the chosen one. Life is not simply what happens to us, but what we dare to pre-play, to imagine with fullness, color, and texture. So, how then do we sit at this ancient practice new minted for our restless century? How do we, beset by sirens crying for our attention, fix our gaze within and become again the author of our next act? We begin with mindset. Not the empty positivity of slogans and coffee mugs, but a posture of radical responsibility. That what you dare to imagine, you may also dare to pursue. That the mind is not a prison of circumstance, but the opening page of the book you have yet to write. You are the sum of your rehearsals. If you rise each morning picturing only the worst, expecting disappointment at every turn, the muscles of hope and action will atrophy. But if you practice another image, if you see your day, your work, your difficult conversation, your most audacious dream with clarity and courage, then your body, your speech, your very presence will learn to bend toward that vision like sunflowers seeking light. This is not arrogance, it is humility. The oak does not apologize for reaching skyward. You owe it to the silent potential lodged within you to inspect, challenge, and direct the images that bloom behind your eyes. The great builders, the inventors and poets, the parents and teachers and healers who shaped history did not wait for the world to name their vision correct. They practiced seeing it when it was yet invisible. In a world obsessed with spectacle, with glare and noise and the drama of the moment, the greatest spectacle is quiet, interior, hidden in the gray folds of your mind. Imagine not only what could be, but who you could become by imagining it. And so, step into this arena. Each morning before the world can script its demands upon you, close your eyes and ask, what is the life I am rehearsing? What drama, what trial, what small victory am I willing to see so that one day I may live it? All change begins in the invisible. Your life, like the great cities and libraries and symphonies of the past, will be an echo of your rehearsals. The curtain rises now. What vision will you choose to see? Look at the brushstrokes of each moment. The way your mind lingers on possibility or anxiety, hope or regret. Mindset is not only a lens through which you see the world, it is the soil from which your entire life springs. Too often we become caretakers of habits we never chose, tending to weeds of doubt and resignation that others planted. But the wise know, the field is always yours to tend, and every vision that grows in the dark is watered by the stories you let yourself believe. Imagine Epictetus in the dusty courtyard. Students gathered at his feet. He did not tell them what to desire, but how to train the desire itself. To see clearly which visions breed freedom and which sow suffering. It's not what happens to you, he said, but how you react to it that matters. Visualization is nothing if not the cultivation of that reaction before the crisis comes. The athlete does not leave her performance to chance. The statesman does not wait for the press of the crowd before steadying his nerves. You too must sculpt your mind with intention, not for show nor for comfort, but to practice again and again, the responding, the enduring, the thriving. Mindset is the stage on which all visualization unfolds. But belief is the backbone. You may picture 1,000 horizons, but if you do not believe you are capable of walking toward them, your images crumble to dust at your feet. Belief is a peculiar thing. It is invisible like the wind, but you see its effects everywhere. A young woman in a quiet village, told by all the world what is impossible, closes her eyes and sees herself crossing distant oceans, building what no one else will build. A prisoner behind bars, stripped of every power but thought, sees himself someday free, living with kindness, carrying light back into the world that caged him. History turns on these moments of private belief. The Wright brothers, hands blistered by failure, pictured flight not as a madman's whim, but as the inevitable next step for human beings. Each crash, each humiliation was met with new experiments. In their minds, the earthbound were meant to lift. The ground was only the starting place. If you watch the film of the future in your mind long enough, if you come to love it, to care for it, to believe it possible, your hands will begin to work as if the world depends on it. Perhaps in the end, it does. Nietzsche spoke of the Übermensch, the bridge between what humanity is and what it could become. But he warned that most drift through life, repeating only what has come before, never daring to see further, to believe that another future is possible. What he called eternal recurrence was not a curse of fate, but a challenge to make every moment worthy of its own repetition. Apply this to your own life. If you knew each hour would repeat forever, would you imagine bigger, love deeper, believe harder? But belief is fragile. Doubt creeps in quiet as mist. There will always be voices, some outside, some within, questioning your vision, pressing you to settle for less. Even the greatest have faltered. Marcus Aurelius faced entire days when the weight of the empire crushed hope from his chest. In his journals, he wrote not only of triumphs, but of vulnerability, of mornings when he awoke exhausted, of moments when courage seemed far away. But he always returned to the image of a person practicing, trying again, sharpening his virtue, not for an audience but for himself. This, perhaps, is the first and hardest battle, to believe not just in the vision itself, but in your capacity to carry it forward. To sit quietly, morning after morning, and see the outlines of a life not yet built. To believe that, despite every past disappointment, you are not finished, you are not too late. This belief does not require certainty. It requires willingness, the humility to be a beginner again, the courage to be laughed at, misunderstood, even ridiculed by those without your vision. Lao Tzu reminds us, a journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. But that step is preceded by something quieter. A vision seen in darkness, held to the heart, undeniable even when unseen by every other eye. With mindset and belief rooting the soil, clarity becomes the water. Too many of us drift through life like ships lost in fog, chasing one glimmer then another, never pausing to set a true course. To visualize is to make the invisible visible, to take the raw ore of longing and smelt it into purpose. Clarity is what gives your vision gravity and direction. Franklin designed his life with lists, virtues kept on pocket-sized charts, ambitions broken into measurable parts. Not because he loved order for its own sake, but because clarity freed his energy for the things most worthy. What are you rehearsing each day? What future do you picture habitually, whether in hope or fear? It is not enough to wish for happiness or success. These are vague horizon lines. The builders of history etched their desires in stone, shaping them with specificity. I will write the laws of a nation. I will heal the sick with new medicines. I will cross the Rocky Mountains by foot. Clarity narrows the torrent of desire into a river that carves canyons, that alters landscapes. To find clarity, begin not with what the world demands, but with honest reflection. The philosophers of old began each dialogue by admitting ignorance, by questioning not just what they wanted, but why they wanted it. When you close your eyes to visualize, see not only achievements, but the cost, the change asked of you, the sacrifices to be made. Picture yourself being forged, not simply crowned. The truest visions, clear as mountain water, will often stir equal parts excitement and fear. This is your compass. Lean into it. Epictetus counseled, first say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do. Simonides taught warriors the method of loci, placing memories, visions, even strategies within imagined rooms and corridors, because he knew that clarity of mind under chaos could mean life or death in battle. You too must prepare for your battles. The difficult conversation, the career pivot, the apology that heals a rift, the first step in a long journey. See them in your mind. Rehearse them with sincerity and detail. Clarity is not rigidity. Water, Lao Tzu would say, always finds a way, but it never confuses the stone for the current. As you sharpen your vision, do not chain yourself to old versions of the dream just because you once cherished them. Let clarity be a living thing, refined by new knowledge, by honest failure, by changing needs. The oak tree you planned as a child may grow into a forest you could not have imagined. When clarity and belief join with the fertile ground of mindset, you begin to sense the approach of something different, a vision gathering weight, inviting you to act. Feel into this tension, for action, as history reveals, is the crucible where vision hardens into reality. The next step is not magical, it is necessary, and it is yours alone to take. The world is a theater of those who dream and those who do. To visualize is to cast yourself in both roles, the playwright and the performer, the oracle and the hero. But there comes a moment when image must become motion, when you must carry your unseen rehearsals into the rough, bright arena of days. Clarity begs for vision, but action demands strength and vulnerability, the courage to leave the comfort of what you've only imagined and press forward into the great wild of becoming lived experience. Consider the stories that echo through the ages. Helen Keller, fingers gliding across the hands of Anne Sullivan, saw herself speaking before she spoke. With practice, with defiance of expectation, her vision became the keystone of her reality. Or Thomas Edison, whose mind conjured a world aglow with electric promise, but whose hands suffered more than 1,000 failures before the light truly shone. Their secret, and yours, if you are willing, is that real vision is always followed by faithful, persistent action. Discipline is the vehicle that ferries vision across the river from mind into matter. It is what meets you after the first rush of inspiration has faded and the work feels cold and mechanical. Marcus Aurelius, gripped by exhaustion, reminded himself each morning, "You must get up. Doing good is not a thing of comfort." To visualize without discipline is to sow seeds on stone. Each image dries out, each hope vanishes in the midday sun. But with discipline, every morning's vision is greeted like a promise made fresh, a vow you keep not to the world, but to your own deep potential. It is easy to wait for motivation, to wish for the winds to blow in your favor. Yet Lao Tzu's river flows straight and silent, carving canyons not by force, but by unwavering persistence. Your greatest vision will fade or flourish in the company of your daily habits. What ritual welcomes your day? What small steps do you honor, even unseen, even unpraised? Action, repeated, is what builds belief from hope into certainty. But action without presence is mere busyness, a hollow clanging. The philosophers, ancient and new, have always warned against confusing motion with meaning. Benjamin Franklin, tireless in his labors, devoted entire hours to reflection, to review, to careful measurement of his motives. Was he building for vanity or for posterity? Every action drips with intention or with emptiness. The discipline you seek is not military rigidity, but mindful engagement. Showing up for your vision with humility, tuning your effort to the frequency of your deepest aim. Gratitude, too, is the companion of action, for there is a danger, subtle as fog, that the vision you pursue will enslave rather than liberate. If you do not give thanks for every step, every failed attempt, every lesson learned under bruised skies. Epictetus taught this with patient clarity. Do not ask for things to happen as you wish, but wish for things to happen as they do. Even as you move toward your vision, hold each day as a gift, each challenge as a tutor. Let your actions be framed not in scarcity, but in abundance. The knowledge that every small step is another thread woven into the tapestry of your becoming. The resilient, the adaptable, the truly visionary. These are not those spared from adversity, but those who meet it with open eyes and open hands. The inventor whose first model failed did not let the rupture define the dream, but refined the tools, adjusted the blueprint, learned from friction. History's greatest visions were almost always unrecognizable in their earliest form. The Eiffel Tower, once mocked as a monstrosity, now stands as Paris incarnate. Nietzsche declared, "He who has a why to live can bear almost any how." Find your why within the vision you hold. See it colored not only by hope, but by a deeper understanding of the pain and sacrifice required. Picture yourself weathering loss, enduring criticism, persisting when alone. Visualize resilience not as resistance, but as movement through, like bamboo swaying in the storm, returning again and again to uprightness and growth. Every action, every discipline, every moment of gratitude becomes the mortar in the invisible cathedral you are building. That structure is not made in a day, nor by the hands of perfect artisans. It is raised, stone by stone, by imperfect hands, guided by a blueprint revised 1,000 times. Celebrate each brick. Be grateful for each setback, for the wrong turn that taught you a new way forward. The course of history, after all, is less a straight line and more the winding, worn path of those unwilling to surrender their vision. However many times it splinters and reforms. Learning, then, completes the circle, not as passive absorption, but as the continual sharpening of vision against the whetstone of new experience. The greatest visionaries have always been students first. Galileo, peering through his primitive telescope, adjusted not only his lens, but his theory, his worldview, as the sky revealed new secrets. Every dream must be flexible, bent to the lessons of the present moment. Those who cling only to their first imagination end up building monuments to nostalgia while the world transforms around them. See your vision as a question to be answered, not a dogma to be imposed. Each step taken is also an opportunity to learn, to adapt, not to abandon the dream, but to refine it, to deepen its roots in the living earth of your own unfolding story. In the end, visualization is not just a solitary act, it is immersion in the collective river of every soul who has dared imagine something different. Your vision, tended with mindset, belief, clarity, discipline, action, gratitude, adaptability, and learning, becomes part of this great living current, altering, in subtle ways, the shape of the world for all who follow. So pause now, close your eyes, and, with the weight of all history behind you, dare to imagine not only a different future, but a different self. A self forged by the vision you hold and the daily acts of courage, humility, and gratitude that compose its song. The story of the world is not written by destiny alone. It is written by vision, by the invisible scenes played out in the silent chambers of countless hearts, the rehearsal of hope amid uncertainty. You are the heir to this quiet revolution. In every age, from marble courts to crowded cities, from cold mountain paths to crowded attic rooms, men and women have closed their eyes and given birth to realities that did not yet exist. Their visions, strange and stubborn, shifted the weight of history, sometimes by a single feather, sometimes by a mountain. Somewhere on a trembling battlefield, a leader steadied her hand by picturing not defeat, but the morning after, when freedom's soul would ring out through narrow streets. Somewhere, a teacher in a windowless classroom sketched lessons no textbook described, believing her students could rise above the limits set by those who could not see what she saw. A parent, exhausted, wove tomorrow's kindness from the raw thread of one more forgiven mistake. Each, in their way, proved the unseen precedes the seen. This is your inheritance. Whatever shadow you stand in now, whatever heartbreak, fatigue, or uncertainty you carry like a cloak, know that visualization is not a magic spell, but the oldest, most human act. It is the lighting of a tiny candle in darkness, and the quiet, faith that day by day, that flame will grow. It will flicker, it will threaten to vanish, the wind will rise against it, and if you persist, it will gather strength. When you next reach for distraction, pause instead for a moment of vision. See yourself, not as perfect, but as willing. Picture not absence of obstacles, but your strength to meet them, your eyes clear, and your hands steady. Remember, the visionaries who shaped the world did not possess superhuman resolve. They simply rehearsed their becoming over and over until the mind and heart could no longer distinguish painting from life. There will always be those who laugh at new visions, who warn you to stay small, to fear disappointment. But remember Franklin holding up his kite to the sky, daring lightning to answer his impossible question. Remember the Stoic emperors meditating on crisis as opportunity, holding fast against fate's sharp winds. Picture the philosophers, the saints, the inventors, the quiet creators, living their days as answers to visions once dismissed as folly. You too are sculptor and stone, painter and canvas. You do not need permission to begin. The history of the world is hungry for what you alone can see. Each imagined moment, practiced in the dim hours of early morning or the hush before sleep, plants a seed whose roots may travel deeper than you can know. As you move from this moment into the brimming chaos of today, bring your visualizations with you, not as idle dreams, but as blueprints for ordinary heroism. When the voice of doubt rises, answer with a practiced image of your own resilience. When trouble knocks, greet it with a response you have already seen in the cinema of your mind, a response shaped by discipline, gratitude, adaptability, and lifelong learning. Let your visions be bold, let them be humble, let them name not only the things you desire, but the qualities you wish to embody. Courage in the face of loss, patience in the face of frustration, cheerfulness in hours of gray. See yourself rising, not just when the sun shines, but when rain lashes the windows and the winds tear at your roof. See yourself steady when the world trembles, gentle when the world rages. And remember, even the grandest monuments begin as the smallest sketches. Every dawn is a blank page. With each day, the world waits for a whisper of your most daring vision. Feed that vision carefully. Return to it not once, but every morning and each silent hour, refining, nourishing, rehearsing, strengthening. The obstacles before you become the way. The vision within you becomes the world's new shape. When you stand at the edge of fear or fatigue, pause, close your eyes. Build the scene again, clearer, kinder, braver than before. Then open them, and begin knowing you walk the same eternal path as those who, through the simple act of persistent visualization, have not only changed their own lives, but turned the course of history. The curtain rises, the world hushes. Your vision is waiting. Make it real.